Welcome to the Full Spectrum Show on another episode of Gat Cast. This is actually episode 5. And today we are talking about some interesting things, I think. And, we are, of course, small arms enthusiasts. And seeing everything that's happening around the world, we know for sure that small arms aren't going away anytime soon. And, of course, there's arguments to be had about the rest of the world being freely armed too. But how are you doing tonight, Sean? I am doing quite well as well. Well, all the wells. But yeah, I kind of want to talk about, just how, it seems like we're moving away from large military platforms, honestly. I think we're going to see things go away, like tanks, especially. Uh, you know, especially when you have man pads and air portable devices, like jets will still be somewhat effective. Maybe 5th generation, 6th generation fighters even more. But, small arms is still always going to be there, I mean, I guess you could call man pads small arms as well because they're man portable, just like guns. But, like, even just seeing the firearms that are being spread out throughout Ukraine and being handed out to civilians, we wouldn't have to do that in America. So, yeah. And precision munitions too. I just don't think that this mass bombing thing works anymore. Like, it's such a waste of munitions. Like, I'd like to see the actual numbers. Like, how much more expensive is it to send in one guided bomb that hits your target than sending 200 bombs to try to take your one target out unguided, of course, you could take the Stuka route, back in World War II and have very precise unguided munitions, but you have to get really close for those to work. And a lot of those Stukas, even in World War II, when they're just facing flat, got shot down all the time. Facing SAMs and man pads, it would be a very, very bad day for a Stuka. So, yeah. So, I mean, and that kind of just leads us to a future of warfare where I really believe that we're going to be much more boots on the ground, and also not in terms of, I think precision munitions goes with high altitude bombing things and beyond visual range. It's weird that we're going and UAVs. So it's weird that we're taking these two, in warfare at least, we're taking these two very separate paths, where we used to be very intertwined. Now it's like there's boots on the ground, and then there's military platforms that are a long way away. Absolutely. It's worrisome too, obviously, being citizens of the planet that we live on as a whole. Why would we go down such a dark path, especially seeing when we all know all too well the atrocities of war, and also, where World War II, I mean, World War One, all well documented, all well known about, and even Ukraine is being really well documented right now, and all on our smartphones and everything, and I just don't. It's crazy to me. I really hope all these sanctions work out. Third time's a charm. But it does make me interested in some of the future advancements that countries have been putting into small arms specifically, since is kind of what we talk about here as small arms, and more specifically, the next generation squad weapons, and also China's new weapons. And we could touch on some of Russia's decisions in their small arms development as well, and the world in general. We can touch on multiple countries and some procurements that I know about, like the French leaving their good old bullpups behind. Shoot, I just dropped the name of them. The FAMAs. Yeah, the FAMAs. leaving the pharmacists behind. I mean, I'm sure they'll still be around for a while, but it's interesting that they're yeah. But it's interesting that they're going to a German gun, especially knowing like the history behind France and Germany. But honestly, then maybe they made a. I wouldn't be surprised because a lot of countries do this where they'll make deals where you give them the rights to produce the firearm there. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a French H&K factory that's producing. Yeah, yeah. That's a lot of countries do that. But very interesting. It seems like a lot of people are adopting the AR platform, which you know tried and tested. Obviously, not not as not as good as an AK in being frozen, but better than an AK in almost all other regards. So, and I'm really curious about the next gen squad weapons too, in general. No, no. Well, they're not. You know, a lot of people are like, well, they're so easy to produce, and they're not really easy to produce. I mean, once you have the manufacturing, but 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 that coming to be said, the same could be said with the AR platform too. And to be fair, it's going to take. Think of how long it took to get all of these production lines to a point where you're making extremely good guns with no issues. It takes a long time. So even if these next generation squad weapons get adopted, I don't think they'll be fleshed out for another 20 years at least. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're right to some degree, but I think the new cartridge is just too advantageous over near peer foes, especially seeing that China's going with something that also, and the fact that we're putting so much emphasis on long range engagements, being the fact that, we're getting all these new scopes being produced for the military. We're big on optics, and apparently in Russia they're not, but I wouldn't be surprised if China knows this as well. But at the same time, China has a lot more small arms to produce, and also they're currently in the midst of making a whole arms overhaul over there as well, but not to a new caliber. So that's interesting to me that they're choosing to leave their old weapon behind and keep the caliber, which you know it could, I wonder if the Brits should have done that with the L85. That's true. I mean, the Brits didn't have to change their. Oh, massive, crazy. Well, same with America. But the thing is, in America, there's such a thriving gun market that like you could sell the ammo so easily. Like, uh, uh, on 308 and stuff like that. And the 308 guns we already have could be easily rechambered with the new cartridge that they're proposing. So that's, I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a lot of good things about it, but you also look at, going instead of just improving their bullpup system, over in China that they had, and going with the whole new rifle. I wonder if the British should have done that. With the L85, it's long history of issues. Hard to say. Hard to say. And speaking of the new Chinese rifles, They look like a mix between AR and AK. They're very odd looking. The QBZ 191, that's what it's called. Go ahead and switch over here if I don't screw it up. Decent chance I will. Oh, there we go. It's just a quick Google image search. You can see that this type of deal. And it shows a lot of pictures, actually, they do have optics on. So that is another interesting thing to note. But, you know, I think that's not, you know, especially the pictures that their government puts out are going to be a lot different than, you know, especially just looking at Russia, you know, and what they're going to be deployed with. Yeah, really interesting. I'm not too sure what to think about it. You know, I'm sure it looks like a more reliable platform than the bullpup system, but I believe so. Let me go ahead and check that round out. It is. And also another interesting thing is the three barrel choices they chose. Their standard barrel length is going to be 14.5. So the same as an M4. Then their carbine length, because the M4 technically is a carbine, is a 10.5 inch. And then their DMR variant is 22 inches, which is quite long. So 5.8 by 42 millimeters, which it honestly also looks like a mix between like an AK and a 5.56 round. I don't know too much about these ballistics though, so let's go ahead and take a look a little bit closer. Put these above my head so anybody that's watching can see. 5.8 by 42 millimeters. So they have a bunch of different variants of it, of course, just like our military. It looks like it's about muzzle energy 1,300 foot-pounds. So that's decently, and the velocity is 3,100 feet per second. So very similar to M4 actually. And the grainage as well, ranging from 64 grains to 77. You know, so it. And so it looks like a steel-cased 5.56 round, basically. Which you would know 5.56 is very, very effective. So I'm sure that this will as well. And, you know, it does look like this has been the same. You know, it's kind of interesting because they started with a very AK type of, you know, rifle that shot that cartridge, then going into, you know, the Type 95, which I think everybody's very familiar with, the magic plastic gun, you know. And that's probably not going away anywhere, especially with the amounts that they produced. I'm sure they're still going to be using that for quite some time. You're right. Or they'll do the Russian thing and put all their worst stuff first. Who knows? Damn. See what happens. I don't know. Maybe that's not what they did. I mean, I keep going back and forth on that whole thing with Russia. Did they do that? You know, it's hard to say if they purposely did that, if it was an accident, or if that is the best that they have right now. I mean, I keep going back and forth, you know, in my mind, like what their game plan is. I have no classified intel, so hard to say one way or the other. But it is interesting that this was started development in 1979, and they took a long time to actually get the round right. So it didn't actually start production until 1987. So it's one of the newer cartridges that have been adopted by any military really on the planet. Which is, you know, on a wide scale. Obviously, there's like 5.7, 4.6, those little personal defense weapon cartridges as well. But yeah, quite interesting stuff, I would say. I'm not 100% sure where future arm development is going to go, but it's interesting that all these countries are moving away from a bullpup and America's now looking into a bullpup. Another really interesting development. And also, these Chinese optics, so many people are saying it's Chinese, it's a, POS, it's not good. But I think we've seen from plenty of Chinese companies and manufacturers that they are well up to the task of making very good optics. I mean, if you look through any of the primary arms optics, I mean, I'm sure there's a few that are, flops, but just as any product from any company makes, but a lot of these primary arms optics are excellent, and for the price, like, it's hard to say no to, especially comparing it to like a traditional, especially like prism optics, which I really like. It's hard to say, from an ACOG, which is your typical American, prism optic, being like usually over $1,000 or close to it, to paying half of that, quite literally, for a primary arms one. And I'm sure that German glass inside the ACOGs is, just that much better looking, but it's just that much better looking. Like, are they still both extremely effective? Yes. So, and exactly. Yeah, I'd have to agree. But yeah, that's also I also want to talk about and this is probably just being sprung off because TFB TV is actually doing a whole series on Euro guns and things like that. And it really, really bummed me out that Europe, with such strict gun laws, that we have such strict import laws. We should really be opening up to these European companies. Like, it's so silly that we are cutting all these companies off just because, I don't know, because we want to make sure that things have enough U.S. import stuff on it, which, I guess, but are we doing the same thing with a bunch of other goods? Like, why is it just firearms? You know what I'm saying? Like, we buy so many products from China every day that don't have like a compliance thing on it that has this much has to be made in America, it is definitely politics, but politics has some Russian firearms, yeah. And to be fair, I get those bans, especially with what's going on currently. So that is a huge bummer. But I mean, just European in general. There's so many cool European firearms that struggle to get to the States. For whatever reason, pistols as well. You can import pistol without any compliance, but as soon as you go to a rifle, like, okay, like I was looking at that it's a Turkish made. It's basically like an MP5, right? Like, it's roller delayed blowback. It takes MP5 magazines, I believe, even, but it has AR controls, which is really cool. And I've been I've been talking about that for a while. But of course, if it takes MP5 mags, it almost certainly doesn't have a last round hold open, right? Uh, how? I just don't know how you do that. Like, how does it know the last round without some type of interference with the magazine? Perhaps like something that would catch somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be really cool though. I mean, it just seems weird to me. Why not use like an MPX mag? Just modernize it a bit. I'll, right. Although I'm almost certain the reason for it would be, Turkey not being owned, not having any partnership with SIG. They wouldn't want to buy another company's magazines, and also Turkey has bought a lot of the production rights to like the G3 and the MP5, so they have a lot of factories over there that build that type of thing. So they probably build their own magazines in house and already have a ridiculous amount for all their, home built MP5s. So I guess it makes sense why you'd go with that from a business side of things. And And the fact is, you're not selling those things to America anyways. So why even integrate it with the American market, really? Still a shame. Definitely still a shame. And Turkey just has some cool guns too. They make a lot of really interesting and, maybe to be fair, less quality, but also really reasonably priced guns, which is really cool that we get so many Turkish firearms coming into America. Also, speaking of hard to get guns, what about like a civilian L85? You know, like a new one, not like one that was. I know, I was just talking crap about them, but like it would be cool. I think a lot of collectors would buy stuff like that, and maybe, hey, one day down the line, after all the surplus starts coming out, some will be converted into semi-auto, which shouldn't be that hard because they're closed bolt guns. It's really just a trigger swap, I'd believe. And obviously removing, a full auto sear. But, I think that's pretty neat. I mean, we're just kind of going over some military guns and guns that, interest us. But that would be awesome. And yeah, definitely not. I would still like, I don't know if the Chinese military would be interested in this. For which country? Oh, you mean like the AEK and the AN-94 and stuff like that? Like SKS era? Like, are you talking about like World War II? Interesting. I guess I haven't seen a lot of those. How do you spell that? OBOV? AOROBOV. Borov. Huh. Just wants guns. Oh, K. You said K? KOR? Okay. Misheard you there. Yeah. Okay. This looks straight out of like some cursed gun image, honestly. Uh, so many of these, so weird. The 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 whole grip is the magazine. I don't, dude. That's a really long grip. Oh, there's some other really weird ones too. Yeah, these look straight out of. I wonder how reliable they were though, because they actually use them in trials. That's weird. Right. Well, seeing some of their other designs. Yeah, it's so weird. I don't even. For real though. Whoa. It reminds me kind of of like an RFB, but that definitely seems to it looks a lot like uh, well, here we go. We have a little guy on YouTube that's making a little. Okay, so as it comes back, picks up a new round. Oh yeah, and it flips it up. That is extremely like the RFB, except the RFB still rides behind it, and this rides over it. So it actually picks up around as it rolls back. But that switch mechanism that you see that moves the spent cartridge up and then into the expenditure barrel looks a lot like the RFBs. Right. That's very interesting. I'm curious what the another thing I'm really interested in is like rates of fire. Like some guns have really amazing rates of fire. Like one gun I specifically think is a terrible gun in general, but an excellent rate of fire is that Chinese. I can't think of a better word for it, but it's like a Chinese fish gun. Yeah, they actually have it in Sandstorm. I want to hear it. Put it up to the mic. But yeah, there's now I'm forgetting it. Maybe it was just a prototype weapon, honestly. Well, and a lot of them are just, straight QBZ and then, and then a number, so it's hard to delineate a lot of times. Is it the QTS-11? I think it might be. With integrated air burst grenade launcher. Yeah, this is the one. There's no pictures of it, but I'm almost positive it's this. Let me open up a new window. Not that one. Yeah, this guy. So weird. But but I but I have to say that the fire rate on this thing is so good. So good. Like what is it coming in at? Does it say what the fire rate is? Muzzle velocity. That's of the. So it's not saying a fire rate, but I believe at least if Sandstorm is realistic whatsoever, it's like 450 rounds a second or like 500 rounds per minute. Per second, not per second, per minute. And I think that's like one of the best fire rates. I guess it depends on what you're doing. Like, I understand that for a PDW type of deal where you're planning to dump like half a mag downrange, at any given target. Like, you're using the number of projectiles to inflict more damage, especially with such a small caliber. But on, even intermediate cartridges, I think that a slower fire rate just ends up being a much more controllable weapon and also makes it so that way you don't go through crazy amounts of ammo expenditure. The other night we were talking about some of the crazy Japanese prototype weapons in World War II, and especially the SMGs and stuff. And just how much ammo they'd have to expend to get to a lot of the points, that it'd be actually a viable option because they just shoot so fast, As we can see right now, logistics is a huge thing to worry about in wartime. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. Which that's that's crazy, which means 2 to 3 times that many. Well, actually, I was going to say that Ukrainians are probably less because you're holding a defensive position, and when you're assaulting a defensive position, you're always expecting to lose more. Like we lost way more when we invaded the beaches of Normandy than the Germans, like a massive amount more, and that's just that's to be expected when you're assaulting a defended position, especially one that's been fortified for years. But I do have to say, specifically towards the Russians, usually when you look at fatalities, casualties are 2 to 3 times of the fatalities. So if they casualties like injuries, people that are out of the fight or have to be healed before going back in are usually, generally speaking, about 2 to 3 times more. So exactly. So if they are legit at 10,000 killed, that means they're at probably another 20 to 30,000 injured, which means they're 40,000 of their 150,000 troop force is gone. So that means a third of their fighting force is gone. Which, if that is true, then I could see why, they're getting 40,000 foreign fighters from Syria to come in to replace them. But that's going to have a whole bunch of problems too with people that aren't used to going below 70 degrees in weather. But that doesn't mean they can't adapt by any means. But getting this right gear, what is Russia going to supply the gear? And also, if he calls in his reserves, I believe there's a law in Russia where to call in reserves, you need like an invasion or like it needs to be a war. So Putin would have to change his stance to do that, I think, from like, or rewrite the law, which I'm sure he could easily do as well. But would have to admit that, it is a a war. Yeah, it is an invasion. It's a war. It's not just a special military operation. But I mean, come on. It's not like this is new to us. I mean, we called the Vietnam War a military conflict. It wasn't a war, but we all know it was a war. Like, yeah, okay. That was a military conflict. Uh, if you're going to go into something, you have a doubt that you're going to win. Don't call it a war. Interesting. So I'm reading this article right now because I was actually looking into Chinese night vision. I'm just curious about how good their stuff is. And it led to this article that's talking about how thermals and night vision are getting into the wrong hands. And it's due to the American market. It's because people are selling them to, like, Chinese citizens are coming here and then buying them and then shipping them out. But they're not buying them because they can't legally buy them from like an ITAR perspective, which is basically like international, what? Let me get this right. ITAR meaning international traffic in arms regulations. So even though they're not technically arms, they still fall under this, like night vision goggles and thermal sights and things like that. So in the States, we can legally buy these without any regulation, which I think is awesome. I think it's such a cool ability, and I think that it's really important that, citizens have the ability to use things like that as well. But it's causing problems overseas, because we're getting these American products, in the hands of the Taliban and ISIS and stuff like that. I mean, Taliban, what a whole mess. We like. I think it's funny specifically that this article is talking about how we need to regulate civilians being able to buy this stuff when our own military is just leaving it behind billions of dollars loads in Afghanistan. But yeah, but let's make sure that the Americans can't get it, so that way they can't ship it to other places illegally. And this specific Chinese guy he got hit with 40 months in prison in 2016 for doing that, because you're not legally allowed to ship them out. But I mean, it's so hard to none of this stuff is on a register, so like if something goes missing, and especially for military wares, something goes missing, it's super hard to track where it goes unless it gets caught through like imports or exports, But it sucks seeing, terrorists get a hold of thermal sites and be using them against good guys or security forces, of any country. Or these guys just have no idea what's going on, such a force multiplier. Yeah, it's yeah, I still hate the idea that, we regulate civilians over it though. Which kind of goes with machine guns too. Why are we regulating civilians and machine guns and suppressors? We've talked about this before. It's kind of going right back to it. It just drives me crazy that we're going through these regulations and the government's just handing the shit out willy-nilly. Like, it's so stupid to me. Like, what we really got to worry about is Americans doing stuff with the stuff that we're giving terrorists. What? Your logic confounds me. Was the AEK ever adopted? That was when I used to play Battlefield a lot more, like Battlefield 3 and 4. That was always one of my favorite guns. Just such a high rate of fire. Which, to be fair, like I said, in real situations, I think a lower cyclic rate is better. But in an arcade game where people take multiple shots, by all means, give me more damage per second, Huh? That's a bummer. Although, for how complicated it was. The 971. Yeah. But, and maybe this is something that we should save for next episode. But I do want to talk about some fantasy guns that could be real. And, I don't have a full list right now, but I do have a partial list. But I'm thinking, like, you never really were into the Borderlands series, though, were you? Yes. Right. It is a cartoony game and it has its own vibe to it, but there's different big corporations that make the firearms in that game. And some of them, are wacky and just elemental and are not realistic whatsoever. Yeah. So there's this one called Jacobs, and Jacobs focuses on like conventional firearms that are like really powerful. But through all my time playing, especially the third one, I was thinking this when it first came out, like all the cool guns in there that could actually be like real guns, right? Like you could design a gun to work like that. And just some funky fantasy guns that I just thought were extremely cool and intriguing. You ever run into that? In guns, I mean, or in games? What do you think of any guns from games that, aren't just based on real life and make you. Right. Okay, that's fair. I think Halo has some interesting guns as well. Yeah, the African 50 cal sniper. Yeah. uh, that one might as well be. Some of those guns in Halo specifically though drive me crazy. Like they call the battle rifle. And it does look like when he loads it, it does look like a battle rifle cartridge. But who in their right mind Who in their right mind would take a battle rifle cartridge, like battle rifle in general, and be like, you know what would make this better? Burst fire. Perhaps, you know, that's true. That's true. And when you're fighting giant aliens, I suppose it comes in handy. Yeah. Right. Yeah, like the 94 kind of. I also am a big fan of 2 round bursts. I think 2 round is if you're. I don't personally. I think bursts are silly in the first place, but if you're going to do a burst mechanism, 2 round burst. Yeah, I think 3 round bursts. Just the first two might hit, but I think the third one is always going to go high. So I think it's just a waste. Right. Yeah. I think so. And then I guess some of the older Halos, the original battle rifle, or not like the battle rifle from Halo Reach, was the semi-automatic one, and that one is actually one of my favorite ones and feels really good. That could easily be a real, and and in fact, oddly enough, if you took the scope off of that gun, it looks a lot like the next generation squad weapon by um ah who am I thinking? Raytheon and those guys. The one that's made in the group, not Sigs. The bullpup one. Sure, squad weapon. Let's see if I can get it up. This guy compared, I mean, minus the scope, and then compared to. That's too many L's. Or what about I mean, these guns are probably going way too far off, but any of the Gears of War guns? Yeah, I mean, obviously to have a chainsaw on the top of one. Oh, almost certainly. Yeah. Or something worse. Right. That's true. Oh, weird. Well, I know that like the Lancer, like the chainsaw one, they're fed from like a box mag in the back because they have like 50 or 60 rounds in them, you know? The Lancer specifically. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Over. I mean, I kind of assumed that as well, just because, I mean, you can't hold 60 in something like that. Yeah. Huge, 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 huge. And they do have other rifles that have about like other variants of the Lancer that have similar type of magazines. Oh, it's not a bullpup, so it is fed from like a traditional style. So it's right behind the chainsaw. But but yeah, it's basically like a big old box mag Like, but you'd have to stack it like, you know, it's a very odd magazine. That feels, yeah. And it uses, seriously, that's way too much weight. With the, especially with, you know, everything else going on inside. I mean, just the magazine alone is like, it'd be cool to design something that just would work similar to it, you know? Something that's not too long, but is like thicker in lengthwise, I should say. But you can get more ammunition in. Because, you know, I can see, like, we see already, like, prototype quad stack mags, you know, for ARs. Yeah. Right. Yeah. For real. I mean, I'm assuming that if you look in the front, they have like a bunch of sensor suites on them. So I'm assuming that it's, you know, we've seen very similar technology attempted to be implemented, you know. It's just not quite there yet in terms of, I mean, I guess some of the stuff I've seen has been pretty impressive, but it's not like a wireless link or anything like that. You have to like wire it up to the rifle scope, and that has its own set of problems. But you know, I could imagine like a system where wherever you're pointing, like on your HUD, because even the Space Marines have like a little glass thing on front, you know, so it would make sense that, you know, exactly. But then the question comes in is, why do other guns have scopes on them? I mean, why not just a back sensor array that has more zoom capability, you know, than your standard rifle? I don't know. It is very odd. It's a very odd choice to do it in such a way. And also, it goes back to it's a tactical tuna for sure. It's another bullpup design. And the charging handle, it's not reciprocating though, I don't think. But I still find it weird because I'm pretty sure he uses the charging handle every time he reloads, which means that there's no either a last round bolt hold open or B, yeah, on this. Yeah, so you have to pull the, uh, which is, you know, which is ridiculous. Oh, one gun that's always gotten me. I can't remember which Call of Duty this was from. Obviously, one of the future ones. It might have been Advanced Warfare or Advanced Warfighter or whatever it was. But it was a sniper rifle that was a bolt action rifle that had a articulate that it didn't. Yeah, I think it was this guy. I don't see a name for it though, but it was essentially a rifle, like a bolt action rifle that had no bolt because it was automated itself. So like it was a bolt action, but it was an automatic bolt action. And there's a bunch of moving parts that moved out the cartridge to get it out, which I always thought was kind of cool, kind of neat. It is very video gamey, but at the same time, especially if you're suppressing weapon, it would make a lot of sense to not let any gases out. And also, a lot of people say the precision of bolt action rifles is a lot higher, which I think is debatable, but no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like you would take the advantages of having a bolt action, but then if you could effectively do it. I don't, you know, obviously this in the future, possibly. Who knows what technology they'll come up with. But right. I mean, I think the reliability issue comes into play big time. But so yeah, which which to be fair, the game does not do that. It cycles about the same as another bolt action in the game. It just is automated. So it's like, well, it is neat, you know. Yeah, I completely agree. But it is, you know, especially for me, I'm big into suppression and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see things like that. And that's I think that was some of my inspiration for the design of Fire that I've been working on for a little bit, which is not going to be in production probably ever, to be honest, for anybody that's listening. It's just a pet project of mine trying to yeah, seriously. Yeah, I don't have the funds to get anything like that into production, and being such a completely new design firearm, I don't think it's gonna happen. But you know, if I can get even a single copy, like a prototype, going, I'd be stoked. You know, of just a basically having a system like that, except instead of using what seems like in the game like some type of electronics to function a bolt action rifle, which I don't think it needs to per se be a bolt action based on a bolt action locking lug or anything like that. I think the AR locking lug works just fine, or the AK for that matter. You know, and just make it delayed somehow so that way, you know, for suppression use. And there have been a lot of really cool suppressed, like specifically suppressed guns, like Knight's Armament, which, you know, they are such, they make a lot of cool guns. I don't think these really went anywhere, but they're so cool. They're so cool. And that is the suppressed revolvers. I will show you a quick picture. Oop. Yep, and it's made specifically to be suppressed, and they're actually revolving rifles. So as you can see, this is obviously some type of weird night sight on it, but you know, integrally suppressed. This is a bad picture, just quality wise. Integrally suppressed, and of course it has a seal on the actual cylinder, very similar to the Gaunt revolver, kind of like this. That makes it very viable for suppression use, and also very good because it's basically a manual gun, like a lever action. But then again, why not just use a lever action in that case? But then again, I think also a lever action probably makes more noise than a cylinder. So I think these are really cool. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. Make a single or double action. Obviously, there's things that come with that as well. I just like the idea of having a really quiet gun. It's just very, very, very appealing to me. And they've made plenty of guns, really cool guns in general. And, you know, we've talked a little bit before about like the veterinary pistols that are bolt action. Yeah, I think it'd also be cool. You know, they have those 22 handguns that are lever action as well. You know, that's another thing I'd like to talk about. I mean, we were running out of time, but real quick, just to sum things up at the end, getting is more, you know, weird, interesting guns is oh shoot. Sorry. My brain's dead. My brain. My brain. A lot of things happen in the world right now. Yeah. Oh, but suppressed pistol caliber, or not even suppressed, but pistol caliber bolt guns. I know there's probably not a huge market for it, and there's a lot of custom ones out there. I just think they're so cool. Like the Delisle, obviously, is an integrally suppressed version, that is basically a Frankenstein gun, which actually I think makes it look even cooler. But I'll show it just just for those who don't know what the Delisle is, I think it's been on my wish list for so long. I'll never get one. It's super cool. It's 45 ACP. It takes 1911 magazines. Has a Tommy gun barrel built on a Lee Enfield action. And there's people that have made reproductions of these. They're really hard to get. Both the reproductions and the originals. They've made tons of different little, like this one, which had a folding stock for paratrooper use. Super, super cool guns. But not... Right? And, that is something to be said as well. But, I mean, even without the integral suppressors, like, there's really not a lot of... Like, I guess there's not a lot of, maybe the market's just not there. You can't really hunt too much other than small game with pistol caliber stuff, and it's not long range shooting stuff because it's all pistols calibers specifically. But I really like the idea of pistol caliber bolt guns. I think that's really cool. Like 9mm, 45, 10mm, or 50 AE would be a really cool bolt gun. There's just so many cool pistol cartridges that I think, it'd be cool to make some bolt guns that fired those. And also, I'm not sure how extensive it is to actually make your own bolt gun. I'm sure it's pretty doable because I've seen a lot of people rechamber, and there's a lot of kits out there to take old surplus guns and rechamber them for like pistol caliber stuff. But yeah. I That's actually probably pretty well suppressed as well, like, especially if you're using subsonics. Right. Destroyer. Silent destroyer. Nice. Lay destroyer. Lee destroyer. But yeah, I think these are really cool, and I think the concept is awesome and in place there to make some really cool stuff. But I pro yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the idea of something like this. I am super game. I just love. I mean, you're not getting far ranges anyways with something like that, you know. I was actually really disappointed talking about video game guns, and I know we're really getting close to our hour mark, but the VSS, the Venturas, the ASVAL. I saw Brandon Herrera's video on it, and I was extremely disappointed with its noise reduction. Even on his with his nice, yeah. And from all the video games that I've ever played, they made it seem like it was just unbelievably quiet, like so good. Yeah, 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 yeah. We're just not there yet. We haven't found the perfect. Yeah, terrible. Although I wonder because he went out and he put his own, maybe, it still sounds differently. He says it sounds better than it normally would, but he's never shot one that sound like a normal one. Just is better. Like just like right? I mean, all you need is a pretty large amount of, area, expansion area. And, the Leonfield, or not the Leonfield, the Delisle specifically, like, I think it was coming like 82 to 85 decibels, which is so quiet. Most modern day suppressors put your guns well over 100 decibels, usually in the 120 range. So, and the hearing safe mark is 140. So a lot of even rifle suppressors don't even get to 140 or just right below 140, which is still tingy on the ears for sure. 85 decibels. Although the expansion chamber on the Delisle, as you can see in this picture, is massive, So, and they also kind of take the Osprey design of modern Osprey suppressors that have the lower expansion chamber, and so that you could still have your irons lined up. Well, anyways, I think we just passed an hour. I think it's been a pretty fun one. Kind of talked about just military stuff and, some of the stuff that we can't have. And, my specific one, this is basically my dream rifle right here, is the Delisle carbine. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So maybe it'll drive me to keep making or thinking of new interesting ways to get similar type performance, You heard it. Like and subscribe. We will. Yeah, if you get me the Delisle, I will make more than one video about it. I'll make as many videos as you can handle. You'll wish you never seen a Delisle again. Thanks for coming to the Gat Cast. This has been the Full Spectrum Show. And Sean. Don't forget Sean.